She canceled our marriage to rekindle her high school romance. Then she expected me to finance her university debts. I didn't fund her fantasy. I funded my exit. I'm Jake, 32 years old. I started my working life immediately after leaving school, working as a laborer. For years, I worked night shifts while studying construction management until I finally earned my degree. It took me 12 years to climb the ladder step by step, but today I earn around $95,000 a year, which is a good salary in our mid-sized Tennessee city. My father, Frank, always told me, "Build something that lasts, son, because everything else is just noise." He was a concrete contractor and poured half the house foundations in the county. He taught me to respect honest work and to not trust those who look down on the people who actually build the world they live in. We spent weekends together. He would show me how to mix different concretes, the importance of interpreting soil studies, and why curing times are worth more than speed. "Today's shortcuts are tomorrow's disasters," he would say, while we watched a slab cure. 5 years ago, I bought a 3-bedroom house for $180,000. I fixed it up myself over 2 years. Kitchen, bathrooms, and a finished basement. It's not a mansion, but it's mine. It's already paid off and is now worth about $260,000. My neighborhood is full of teachers, nurses, mechanics, hard-working people who maintain their properties and respect others' lives. It's the kind of place where people greet you when they see you in the yard or offer help if they notice you struggling with a project. My fiancée, Savannah, 29, was an elementary school teacher. She taught 3rd grade at a local public school and earned about $48,000 a year. She always said that even though the pay wasn't good, she was changing lives. And that's fine. I respect that vocation. But what made me uncomfortable was hearing her constantly complain about how little she earned while refusing to work at private schools that offered better salaries, because according to her, they lacked diversity or social consciousness. I met her 3 years ago at a barbecue hosted by my friend Cody. At the time, she was dating a cousin of his, but they broke up a month later. Savannah started texting me, and over time, we went out. Everything moved fast. After 18 months, she moved in with me, and last December I proposed to her at her favorite downtown restaurant. Nothing extravagant, just the 2 of us and a ring that took me 3 months of savings. $8,500 for a 1.5-carat diamond that she chose herself. The wedding was planned for October. It was going to be a small ceremony, about 80 people, with the reception at the country club. The budget was around $22,000, which I would cover entirely because Savannah's parents, already retired and on fixed incomes, could barely contribute. The real problem was her student debt, around $89,000 between her bachelor's and master's degrees in education, both from private universities. That translated to monthly payments of $850. When she moved in with me, we had the financial talk. She confessed she couldn't handle the payments, and I offered to help. For a year and a half, I was the one who paid those installments, in addition to the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and almost all household expenses. She contributed about $400 for food and her personal things. I thought it was the right thing to do, that we were building a future together. She often told me she had never had anyone support her before. She'd comment that her ex-boyfriends didn't understand her vocation and that I, in contrast, backed her up. Looking back, I realized there were red flags. For example, the way she rolled her eyes when I talked about my construction projects. "They're just buildings, Jake. It's not like you're discovering the cure for cancer," she'd say. It never mattered that those projects included elementary schools where children like hers would study. I'd get excited solving a structural problem or meeting a difficult deadline, but she seemed to check out. She also made comments about my truck, a 2018 Ford F-150 I bought, used in cash. It's reliable and perfect for hauling materials for my renovations. But Savannah would always point out luxury cars in parking lots, saying that one day we'd have something more professional. She even mentioned her friend Kate's boyfriend, who drove a Mercedes and how good it looked in front of the school. The worst was how she treated my family. My parents still live in the house I grew up in, a modest country home on the outskirts. My dad, now retired, spends his time crafting furniture in his workshop. Savannah almost always found excuses not to visit them, and when she did, she was glued to her phone. She feigned politeness, but showed no real interest in my dad's construction stories or my mom's garden. I remember once she commented, "Your dad is very handy with his hands," in a tone that sounded more like mockery than praise. And then she added, "Mine was always more intellectual." Her father had sold insurance all his life, which is fine, but she said it as if that made him superior to someone who had built foundations for 40 years. The beginning of the end came in August, 2 months before the wedding. Savannah was spending more and more time on social media. That wasn't unusual. Teachers love their Facebook groups and Pinterest boards, but this time she was overly secretive. She would hide the screen, closing apps when I approached. If I asked, she answered vaguely, "School stuff," or "wedding planning." One Saturday morning, she was in the kitchen making coffee, practically bouncing with excitement. Meanwhile, I was reviewing the schedules for a new medical center, whose construction was set to start the following week. Suddenly, she told me enthusiastically, "Jake, you'll never guess who messaged me on Facebook." I was reading the news on my tablet and barely looked up, without much interest. "Who?" "Chase Whitfield. Do you remember him from high school?" The name meant nothing to me. "Should I know who he is?" I asked. "We dated in our senior year. He was student council president, team marshal, voted most likely to succeed. We drifted apart when we went to different universities, but we always said we'd find each other again someday," she replied, with a sparkle in her eyes I had never seen before. The way she talked about him gave me a knot in my stomach. "Chase?" I wanted to confirm. "Yes. He's going through a tough time and saw my engagement announcement. He wanted to reconnect, see what old friends were up to," she said with a radiant smile. "Isn't that sweet?" Sweet wasn't the word. More like convenient, suspicious, definitely. Over the following weeks, Savannah started mentioning him constantly. She talked about how Chase had moved to California after college and worked in tech. She told me about his trips through Europe, that he painted landscapes and sold them online. She always found a way to bring up his achievements, his sensitive soul, his artistic vision. She was looking at him all the time on her phone and would say, "He was always profound. Even in high school, he saw the world differently. He understood me like no one else." She even showed me his paintings, which were decent, nothing extraordinary, but to her they seemed museum-worthy. When I asked if he was married, had children, or what his situation was, she was evasive. "It's complicated. He's sorting some things out." If I insisted, she would get defensive, accusing me of being jealous or controlling. The warning signs were clear, but I was absorbed in work. We had a huge hospital project, and my shifts exceeded 60 hours a week. The wedding was practically organized months ago, so I let her finalize the details. I trusted her. Monumental mistake. She started talking about signs and destiny. One night, while I was reviewing blueprints at the table, she asked me, "Don't you think it's curious that Chase wrote to me right before the wedding? What are the odds?" "Pretty high," I replied. "Your engagement announcement was public. Any of your acquaintances could have seen it and contacted you." She frowned. "Don't you believe in destiny?" "I believe in making intelligent decisions and in hard work. People use destiny to justify bad choices." That conversation ended badly. She told me I was cold, that for me, everything was logic and numbers. "There's more to life than blueprints and budgets," she snapped. Shortly after, Savannah started coming home later, excusing herself with parent meetings and school commitments. When she returned, she brought Chase into the conversation, saying that he understood her vocation as a teacher, that he encouraged her artistic side, that he stimulated her intellectually. To me, they were small but constant knife thrusts. I was investing all my effort in securing our future, while she was letting herself be seduced by high school memories and romantic fantasies. One night, she even blurted out, "Chase says I should write children's books, that I have a gift for storytelling. I'm wasting my talent teaching others." "Books don't pay bills," I retorted. "Your student loans are $850 a month. It's not all about money, Jake. You also have to follow your dreams." I bit my tongue to keep from telling her that those dreams were being supported by my unromantic construction job. The final blow came on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks before the wedding. I had had an exhausting day on the job site, covered in dust and with heavy boots. As I walked in, I found her at the table with wine and her laptop open, crying. Everything seemed rehearsed. "We need to talk," she said, her voice broken. I sat down across from her, still in my work clothes. "What's wrong?" "I can't marry you, Jake." Those words struck me like a physical blow. "What do you mean you can't marry me?" Chase and I have talked every day this past month, about life, dreams, what we want for the future. I thought what we had was love, but it's not. It's comfort, security. With him, I feel alive again. "With the guy you haven't seen in over 10 years? I asked incredulously. "Yes, we have a connection that transcends time and distance. The universe separated us so we could find each other now, when we were ready." I looked at her, listening as she repeated lines from a cheap movie as if they were profound wisdom. "This is real life, Savannah, not a romantic novel. You don't understand. You've never felt a love like this." "You're right," I snapped. "I never fell in love with someone else while I was engaged." She winced but kept going. "We can't ignore what's happening. Chase and I are soulmates. We always have been." "Where is he now? Is he still in California?" She hesitated before answering. "He came back a few weeks ago." "Weeks ago. And you didn't think to tell me?" "I didn't want to worry you unnecessarily." "And canceling our wedding 3 weeks before is fine?" "I know the timing is terrible, but I can't live a lie. I can't marry you when my heart belongs to another." I was silent, processing 3 years of a relationship, the house we had made a home, the invitations sent, the deposits paid, the loans I had been paying for over a year and a half, all reduced to, "My heart belongs to someone else." "So, what now?" I asked, my voice dry. "Chase and I are going to take things slow, see where this leads us." Obviously, I made it clear to her that I would move out, that I wasn't going to continue sharing a house with someone who had decided to break our engagement over a whim disguised as destiny. Still, I tried to sound composed when I told her that maybe, in time, we could be friends, although deep down the last thing I wanted was to keep seeing her. Then the real reason why she had sought me out appeared: her student loans. When I asked her what she planned to do about them, she looked at me confused, as if the thought hadn't even crossed her mind. "What about the loans?" she replied, feigning naivete. "I've been paying them for a year and a half," I reminded her calmly, although I was boiling inside. "You're going to take care of that now." She bit her lip and looked away. "Well, I can't cover those full installments with my teacher's salary. I barely survive." "I thought you would help me with a gradual transition." I couldn't help but laugh, though it wasn't a cheerful laugh, but one of disbelief. "Are you seriously telling me that you want to leave me for your high school boyfriend and still expect me to keep paying your bills?" Savannah tried to justify herself with that sweet tone she used when she wanted to manipulate me. "It's not exactly like that. You offered to help me. You said you wanted to support my career. When we planned to get married, your income was going to be our income, and I thought you understood how hard it is for teachers to make ends meet. I can't suddenly take on $850 monthly payments." I stared at her. "Then you should have thought about that before diving headfirst into following your heart." The conversation became an endless loop. She insisted over and over as if my feelings were an ATM that should remain open even after the betrayal. She repeated phrases like, "If you really love me, you would help me. What we had should mean something." It was a poisonous speech that wore me down until I was exhausted. That night I ended up on the sofa, staring at the ceiling for hours, unable to sleep. The silence in the house weighed on me like never before. Every corner reminded me of the dreams we had built and that she had shattered with a click on Facebook. When dawn broke, she was gone. In her place, she left a hurried note. She was going to stay with her friend Megan while she cleared her head. And, as if nothing had happened, she asked me to cover the next student loan payment, just until she could organize her budget. The audacity left me speechless. I decided not to go to work and dedicated myself to canceling the wedding vendors. Each call was a blow. I lost thousands in deposits. The venue kept $3,500. the photographer $1,000, and the florist at least returned almost everything except $300. In total, around $4,800 thrown away for a broken dream. The money hurt, of course, but it hurt more to think that all that effort had amounted to nothing because Savannah had decided to chase the fantasy of a soulmate on social media. That night, I called my friend Trevor, who works in systems for the school district. "I need a favor," I said bluntly. "Can you check some employment records?" "Depends on what you want," he replied cautiously. "A guy named Chase Whitfield. Savannah says he moved back to town." Trevor was silent for a few seconds. "Jake, are you sure you want to go down this path? What you find might hurt more. Just tell me what you know." An hour later, he called me back. "Chase Whitfield, 29 years old. They hired him 3 weeks ago as a substitute teacher. He lives at 1247 Oak Street." I knew that place. A complex of cheap apartments, the kind with peeling walls, broken air conditioners, and neighbors who usually leave their cars running in case they need to make a quick escape. Nothing like the profile of the successful man Savannah described with such a sparkle in her eyes. Intrigued, I investigated further in public records. What I found chilled me. Chase had filed for bankruptcy in California 2 years ago. He had been evicted from his last apartment for non-payment. He had several unresolved traffic tickets and a suspended license. But the most shocking discovery was that he was married to Brittany Allen for 4 years, and there was no record of divorce. Savannah's supposed soulmate was not only a financial disaster but was also married. That same afternoon, I parked across from his building. At 6 o'clock, an ordinary man appeared. Thinning hair, worn polo shirt, wrinkled pants, and a fast food bag in his hand. He struggled with the lock of a dilapidated apartment. Nothing like the charismatic intellectual they had sold me. I watched him for several more days. His routine was depressing. He worked as a substitute when called. He used the free internet at the public library. He shopped at discount stores and ate at fast food chains. His car, a battered 2009 Honda Civic, had a cracked windshield and a muffler so damaged I could hear him from 3 blocks away. On Friday, I saw him meet Savannah at a coffee shop. She looked like a teenager in love, bright eyes, a constant smile, practically jumping with excitement. He, on the other hand, was distracted, checking his phone every few minutes. When the bill came, Savannah slid her card without him even touching his wallet. It was at that moment I realized I had the upper hand. On Saturday, I called her. "We need to talk about the house," I said, "and your things." "Oh, Jake, what a relief." I wanted to talk about it calmly. "I've missed the house. And Buddy," she said, mentioning the cat that had always been mine, even though she claimed him as shared. At 2 o'clock, Savannah arrived, and with her, Chase. Just as I had imagined, she wanted to bring him to show him the standard of living she had left behind, as if that made her look more interesting. She looked impeccable, freshly cut hair, perfect makeup, a new dress. He, however, was as tired and out of place as ever. "Chase, this is Jake," Savannah said radiantly. "Jake. Chase." He shook my hand with a weak grip and without looking me in the eye mumbled, "Nice house. Very traditional." Savannah could barely hide her disappointment, having expected a more enthusiastic comment. I simply replied, "Thanks. I built most of the interiors myself. Savannah has lived here for almost 2 years." I invited them to sit down. She settled on the edge of the sofa, tense. Chase seemed uncomfortable, as if he wanted to be anywhere else. I sank into my armchair and went straight to the point. "I've been thinking about what you said, Savannah, about your student loans." Her face lit up as if she was convinced I had finally come to my senses. "Really? I knew you'd understand after thinking about it a little," she said with a triumphant air. I nodded slowly, but my words pierced her like an arrow. "Oh, of course I understand. I perfectly understand that you want to start a new life with Chase, but what you also want is for me to finance that adventure." Chase shifted uncomfortably in the armchair, avoiding my gaze. "Look, man, I don't think it's like that. Actually, Chase, I'm curious about something," I interrupted him. "Savannah says you work in tech. What company exactly?" He hesitated for just a second. Well, I'm between jobs right now. He's in the middle of a career transition. Savannah jumped in defensively. He's dedicating himself to his art while figuring out his next step. Ah, interesting, I murmured sarcastically. And tell me, where do you currently live, Chase? I have a place on Oak Street. It's temporary while I get stable. The Oak Meadow Complex, Unit 15B. Paleness washed over his face. How do you know that? It's incredible what you can find on the internet. Things like, for example, marriage licenses. Savannah looked at me, bewildered. Marriage licenses? I pulled a piece of paper from the folder I had prepared. Chase Whitfield married Brittany Allen on June 15th, 2019, and to this day, there is no record of divorce. Congratulations, Savannah, you're the other woman. The silence became so thick it could be cut with a knife. In just 10 seconds, Savannah went through an impossible range of emotions, while Chase looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. We're separated, he stammered. It's complicated. Separated but still married, I clarified. With 2 children, according to your bankruptcy filing in California. Children who, apparently, are still living with your wife while you pursue your artistic dreams in Tennessee. Savannah looked at him in disbelief. You have children? It's not what you think. What I think, I cut him off again, is that you came back here because you're broke, homeless, and thought you could manipulate your high school girlfriend into supporting you, exactly like I have for the last 18 months. Savannah tried to defend him, although her voice lacked strength. That's not true. I opened the folder and slid the documents onto the table. Here's your employment history with the school district. 3 weeks as a substitute teacher, $90 a day when they call you. The lease contract, $650 monthly rent, 2 months overdue. Credit report, maxed out cards and accounts and collections. She took them with trembling hands. You told me you worked in tech. I did work in it. Yes, for a while. Things didn't work out as expected. You told me you were an artist. I am, but the market is tough. You told me you were single. Brittany and I are getting divorced. We just need to finalize it. Savannah looked like she was about to faint. Chase was sweating, calculating how to escape as quickly as possible. I leaned towards them calmly. Here's what's going to happen, Savannah. You have until Sunday night to get all your things out of my house. Anything left after that, I'm donating to Goodwill. Jake, please, let's talk, she pleaded. And your student loans? They are no longer my problem. I canceled the automatic debit with the lender. You can't do that. I can't pay them. That's Chase's problem. He's your soulmate. I'm sure he'll find a way. Chase was already on his feet. I think there's a misunderstanding here. The only misunderstanding, I faced him directly, is that Savannah believed you were anything more than a parasite looking for someone to support him. Let's go, Savannah, he said, pulling on her arm. But she didn't move. She was staring at the papers with tears streaming down her face. This wasn't supposed to happen, she murmured. No, of course not, I replied harshly. This was supposed to happen at our wedding, in front of our families, after I had wasted more years supporting someone who only saw me as a walking wallet. That forced her to get up, staggering, still clutching the documents. I need time to think. You've had it. You chose Chase. Now you live with his reality, not mine. I escorted them to the door and watched as Chase's old Honda barely started in my driveway. Through the windshield, I could see Savannah crying while he gesticulated furiously, probably blaming me for ruining their reunion. That same night, I called my father, Frank. Dad, Savannah canceled the wedding. She did it for her high school boyfriend. He was silent for a few seconds. I'm sorry, son. That's rough. That man is married, with kids, broke, living in a deplorable apartment, and your ex thought he was her ticket to a better life. It looks like she got exactly what she was looking for. I confessed that I had been paying her student loans for a year and a half, and that she still expected me to keep doing it after leaving me. My father let out an incredulous laugh. What nerve! And what did you tell her? To figure it out herself. Well done. Your mother would have liked that answer. Mom had died when I was in college. Dad raised me, teaching me not to let anyone take advantage of my good heart. I could hear his voice echoing. Love can't be bought, son, but you can rent someone's attention. Sunday night came, and Savannah never showed up for her belongings. On Monday, I loaded everything into my truck. Clothes, books, decorations, everything she had tried to use to give the house a feminine touch. It all went to Goodwill. The only thing I kept was the engagement ring, forgotten on the counter in one of her outbursts. On Tuesday, she called me at work, indignant. You can't throw away my things. There were expensive things. I gave you a deadline. You didn't come. I was processing it. I needed time. You've had 3 years to process. How much more do you need? I want my things back. Then you should have picked them up when I asked you to. She broke down on the other end of the line. Jake, please. I'm staying on Megan's couch. I have nowhere to put anything. And Chase's apartment. Long pause. It's small and he's having problems with his roommates. Roommate problems? Huh. Sounds more like he can't pay his share of the rent. That's no longer my problem. She sobbed. Don't be like that. I know I made mistakes, but I thought we could at least be friends. Friends don't abandon you 3 weeks before the wedding for a broke married guy they knew in high school. He's going to get divorced. When? They've been separated for who knows how long, and he hasn't even filed the papers. The silence on the other end of the line was so heavy, I could almost hear it. Savannah, I said finally, in a tone that was half frustration and half resignation. Open your eyes. That man is using you. He's nothing more than an opportunist who needed a roof and someone to cover his bills. That's why he dedicated himself to searching for his old girlfriends on Facebook, until he found the one he thought was naive enough to fall for his games. That's not true, she retorted with a mix of anger and fear in her voice. Oh no? Then explain to me why he's not the one helping you with your student loans. Why are you calling me instead of going to your soulmate? She didn't answer. There was only silence. Several seconds passed that felt like an eternity until she confessed in a thread of a voice, because he can't help me. He's going through financial problems. Financial problems, I repeated sarcastically. Savannah, he's broke. He's been like that for years. If you checked his credit history, you'd understand. I don't have money to pay for a credit report. How curious. If only you knew someone who's been paying your bills for 18 months, maybe you could... I didn't wait any longer. I hung up. That same afternoon, my friend Trevor called me. His tone was almost amused, as if he enjoyed giving me information that confirmed what I already suspected. Jake, want an update on your competition? He said. Spill it. Chase Whitfield stopped showing up at school. Yesterday was his last day as a sub. Did they fire him? No. Nothing like that. He just disappeared. It seems his wife found him and started calling the school asking for him. Yes, I'm talking about Brittany Allen, the same woman he said he was divorcing. And that's not all. Last week he applied for food stamps and already has a garnishment order on what little he earns. I couldn't help but smile with a coldness I had never felt before. Everything was collapsing faster than I could have planned myself. On Wednesday night, Savannah appeared at my house. She knocked on the door with an insistence that betrayed desperation. I opened it, and there she was. Greasy hair, wrinkled clothes, dark circles under her eyes that made her look like someone different from the woman I had planned to marry. Can I come in? She asked, her tone broken. I don't know why I agreed. Perhaps out of habit, perhaps out of humanity. But I only allowed her into the hallway. No further. Chase left, she blurted out. And what does that mean? That I don't know where he is. He's not answering calls, and the building manager says he moved out yesterday. He left owing 2 months' rent. Wow. And what happened to your epic love story? Don't be cruel, she replied, but there was no conviction in her voice. What do you want, Savannah? I want to come home. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Home. This isn't your home anymore. You made that clear when you chose Chase. I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. He wasn't who I thought he was. I don't say, Jake, what we had was real. I let myself be blinded by empty promises. But with you I had something solid, safe, and boring. Don't forget you told me I made you feel trapped. She lowered her gaze, tears threatening to fall. I was wrong. You made me feel protected, loved. That was before, not anymore. It doesn't have to be. We can try again. We can go to couples therapy, whatever you want. I looked at her in silence. There was a whirlwind inside me, anger, disappointment, compassion, but also a cold sense of justice. Do you understand what you're asking me? I finally said. Yes, I'm asking you for another chance. No, what you're asking is for me to take you back after you left me for another man, a married man with children, 3 weeks before our wedding, and after having depended on me for a year and a half. I know it sounds terrible. It doesn't sound terrible, Savannah. It is terrible. It's the worst thing someone who claimed to love me could do to me. I do love you. No. What you love is what I give you. You love having someone who pays your bills and solves your problems, but you don't love me. She burst into tears. Jake, please, I have nowhere to go. You have parents, you have friends, you have a job. My parents don't want to see me. Megan can't handle me sleeping on her couch anymore. And at work? What about your job? The principal started asking questions. Everyone knows what happened with Chase. A relationship with a married substitute isn't exactly the image they want in a small school. I might lose everything. So you could be jobless, incomeless, and with almost $90,000 in loans. She nodded in defeat. I looked at her with a mix of pity and satisfaction. I'm sorry, I can't help you. Can't or won't. Both. So, 3 years together means nothing? It meant everything until you decided it didn't. She turned toward the door, but before leaving, she mumbled, At least the loans. Until I get stable. I won't pay them. With what money? You should have thought about that before destroying your life. She left. From the window, I watched her get into the car that I had helped her buy. She stayed inside for a while, surely crying before driving off. I poured myself a whiskey, sat in my father's old armchair, and stroked Buddy, my cat. The house felt bigger without her mess, although also emptier. Yes, I had loved her, and in part I still did, but I learned that love is useless when one of the two only sees the other as a safety net. 2 weeks later, Trevor called me again. Savannah quit the school. Officially, they say she's seeking new opportunities. The truth is, parents started pressuring, and the board decided to discreetly remove her. Now she was unemployed, single, with $850 monthly payments, and zero income. Part of me felt guilty, but another part felt vindicated. She was finally facing the consequences of her own choices. 3 weeks later, I ran into her at the supermarket. She was behind the register wearing a faded blue uniform polo shirt. Her eyes were tired, and she seemed to have lost weight. When she saw me, she blushed. Jake. Savannah. How are you? Good, I'm good, she said, though it was evident she wasn't. Her hands were shaking as she scanned my groceries. Do you work here full-time? For now, yes. Until I find my next step. I thought about it in silence. In our city, a cashier earns about $14 an hour, even with a full shift. That doesn't even reach $30,000 a year before taxes. The woman who one day looked me in the eye and said I made her feel trapped was now chained to something much worse, the consequences of her own decisions. It wasn't enough to cover her student loans. Well, at least it's something, I replied sincerely. And I meant it, not with sarcasm. Any honest job was better than doing nothing. She looked up with a suspicious gesture, as if expecting me to mock her, but I wasn't. As I was leaving, she called out to me from the door. Jake. I turned to look at her. Chase's wife found him in Alabama. He was arrested for not paying child support. I was silent for a few seconds, then replied, I'm sorry to hear that. "Do you really mean that?" she replied with a hint of bitterness. I thought for a few seconds before answering. Yes, I'm sorry. Not for him. Because Chase made his own choices and is now facing the consequences. I'm sorry for you. Because you got caught in the middle of his mess. Savannah nodded, and tears accumulated in her eyes that she tried to hold back. I believed it was different, that what we had was going to be special. The special thing you had was with me, I told her calmly. You just didn't know how to value it until you lost it. That was the last conversation I had with Savannah. 6 months later, I learned through acquaintances that she had moved back in with her parents. She was working 2 part-time jobs while trying to regain her teaching license. The student loans were on forbearance, but the interest kept growing without stopping. Her debt already exceeded $95,000. I, on the other hand, kept the house. After a few months, I started dating again. Nothing serious, just reconnecting with life. I learned to cook better, dedicated more time to my friends, and found a new passion: carpentry. I turned my garage into a small workshop and started building furniture, just like my father did. The engagement ring I once bought for Savannah I sold, and with that money I made the down payment on a rental property. I thought investing in real estate was much smarter than having a diamond stored in a drawer. Today, I can say I'm doing well. More than well, actually. The house felt like my own home again, and not a showcase for someone else's dreams. Buddy, my cat, enjoys having all my attention to himself. My bank account finally started to grow instead of emptying. Every now and then I remember her, not with resentment, but with the clarity of someone observing a lesson learned. Savannah looked for a future built on empty promises and ended up facing the consequences. I, on the other hand, discovered that true peace is not about convincing someone to stay, but about learning to let go in time. I'm not interested in knowing what will become of her in the coming years, or if she will ever get out of her legal problems. That's no longer my concern. My life is now focused on what I build with my own hands, on the home I recovered, and on the peace that comes from knowing that my steps belong only to me. In the end, I understood that not everything that hurts is a loss. Sometimes it's simply the space left by something that should never have stayed.